This video is sponsored by Atlas VPN. Use my unique code to get a 3-year subscription for just $1.99 per month with a 30-day money-back guarantee. Salutations, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Kidology and I make videos about everything and anything to do with modern society. Somebody told me off for not saying salutations at the beginning of my videos, so I do apologize sincerely for that, and I hope that this makes up for it. And so today we're going to have a bit of a mix of a scripted and non-scripted parasocial therapy session together, because I think that 2023 is going to be an interesting year for politics and political commentary, especially on YouTube and other various spheres of social media, probably bar Twitter. And I thought I would pose the question as to whether 2023 is going to be the year of anti-woke. And so I just want to disclaim this video by saying that I'm not trying to project any normative criteria or normative propositions. I'm being purely analytical because that's what I like to do. I like to sort of see everything around me. I like to see all my chips on one surface, and I like to evaluate and just look at it sort of from a bird's eye view. So please don't see this as me prescribing anything normative, but more so as me just voicing my thoughts of what I'm seeing, what I'm hearing, and wanting to engage in discourse with you about it. But I'd like to just quickly give a massive thank you and shout out to today's video sponsor, Atlas VPN. Atlas VPN is a virtual private network, specifically a protected internet connection that blocks third parties like hackers, the government, advertisers, and internet service providers from tracking your online activity and stealing your data. With Atlas VPN, your connection is instantaneously protected, allowing peace of mind not just for you, but your entire family. I, for instance, do a lot of my work and my script writing in cafes like Starbucks, and having a VPN ensures that all of my data, all of my information, my internet searches are protected and secure by making them private as opposed to public. From making hotel bookings to connecting to a public Wi-Fi, Atlas VPN will get you the best deals and keep you secure. You know I'm a sucker for horrors, and well, Atlas VPN has not disappointed by allowing me to watch even more horror films than is probably healthy for me. One of my all-time favorite horror films is It. However, it is not available on UK's Netflix, and so I was in a bit of a dilemma. All I had to do was turn on my Atlas VPN, where I have over 750 different public servers to choose from, and in a matter of seconds, I was able to access a whole new world of films, shows, and experiences, including It. Currently, Atlas VPN is running a massive discount. If you use my unique link shown on screen and linked down below, you will get a 3-year subscription worth as little as $1.99 per month. This one subscription covers an unlimited number of devices, and it includes a 30-day money-back guarantee. This discount ends soon, so join me now in prioritizing and protecting your data and well-being online. Thank you so much to Atlas VPN for sponsoring this video. And now, let's get back to it. So we know Piers Morgan, Tucker Carlson, Steven Crowder, Jordan Peterson, Ben Shapiro, the typical anti-woke figureheads who have been at the forefront of the inception of socio-political commentary on social media, from especially the alt-right and alt-right perspective. But I would say that things have gradually been evolving. Anti-woke sentiment appears to be spreading from the very influential, though relatively small and insular sphere of online alt-right and alt-right reactionaries into the mainstream and its culture. Typically, the only people who rarely, truly, wholeheartedly cared about teachers teaching critical race theory or teachers teaching their students about pronouns and sexual identity were these commentators. But as I said, things appear to be shifting and expanding. Howard Brown, the face of the UK's Halifax adverts, recently released what is called an anti-woke protest song, and the lyrics are quite insightful. Society's got so angry. People are frightening. What happened? Is it because we're on the internet all day. Feels like we have badly gone astray. Is there anyone who knows? And my glasses are still slipping down my nose. What happened? Everybody's scared of being attacked. Attack, attack, attack. Suddenly, opinions are now facts. What happened? Seems we are descending to new lows. My glasses are still slipping down my nose. And I think this song is actually quite an interesting example of how anti-woke is gradually becoming more mainstream. And I got this from the line, and my glasses are still slipping down my nose. This idea that the same things that are causing everybody anxiety or problems or the same annoyances of everyday trivial daily life are still there. And even the things that aren't so trivial, such as income inequalities, such as the housing bubble never bloody well bursting, job insecurity, inflation, all these things are still occurring. But everybody is fighting. Everybody is so angry and vexed about X, Y, and Z. And I think this speaks to the sentiment that people who otherwise would not get engaged in woke or anti-woke, or people who are pretty woke, are beginning to question some things. A few days ago, M&M's announced on their Twitter account that they are indefinitely putting the brakes on their spokes candies. As we know from last year, a huge controversy blew up around M&M's diversifying their spokes candies. The idea being to reflect a more progressive and dynamic world. Serially online conservatives were very happy that they had won the culture war on this one, but alas, it was merely a troll, a publicity stunt. Well done to M&M's marketing team. You did very good in preparation for the Super Bowl ad. But I think what most sticks out to me as an example of why 2023 may be the year of anti-woke is down to two clips that have simultaneously gone quite viral. The first clip is, well, based in real life and true, and the second one is fictitious and from a film. But both of them convey the same resistance to woke. The former refers to comedian Konstantin Kissing's opening speech at the Oxford Union 2 weeks ago. I will get back to that one just now. The other clip is from the highly controversial film Tar, starring Cat Blanchett and directed by Todd Field. Cat plays Lydia Tarr, a composer who is also a lesbian and is caught up in cancel culture for her actions and what she has done in her private life, her particular ethics, etc. The film is not for the faint-hearted, but it very much represents a type of anti-woke sentiment underlying the entirety of the film, as well as the backlash to it.
It's a dreadful movie. It has to be one of the stupidest movies I've seen in many a long year. It is an absolutely one-note movie. It says, when women get power in what we could call the larger art world, in this case, Cate Blanchett plays a world-class orchestra conductor. When women get power like that, they're just as awful as men. End of story. When lesbian women get power, they're just as awful as men. And oddly enough, her fall turns the movie at the end into one of the most racist pieces of shit I've ever seen in a serious movie that's being taken seriously. You see a country that's maybe Thailand, and the first thing you see is how she is going to be utterly degraded by having to live in this poverty. And she ends up in something like Comic-Con, only they're all brown people wearing costumes.
The scene in question is a very public conversation between Lydia and a BIPOC pangender student called Max. Have you ever played or conducted Bach? Max responds, honestly, as a BIPOC pangender person, I'd say Bach's misogynistic life makes it kind of impossible for me to take his music seriously. Lydia is a visiting professor or speaker during a class at Juilliard, and Max is an aspiring composer. Can classical music, written by a bunch of straight Austro-German church-going white guys, exalt us, individually as well as collectively? And who, may I ask, gets to decide that? You know, what about Beethoven? You into him? Because for me, as a U-Haul lesbian, I'm not too sure about old Ludwig. But then I face him, and I find myself nose to nose with his magnitude and inevitability. This piece is very au courant, says Lydia Tarr about a piece of music chosen by Max. Au courant means aware. And this is a very subtle reference, I think, to the idea of woke. the idea of being aware and awake to injustice and social injustice, especially in identifying it and therefore calling it out. Lydia further describes the Icelandic classical composer Anna Thordóttir as representing all current trendiness. And Lydia's intent in all of this is to quite literally and very brutally humiliate Max, which she succeeds in. You play really well, but nowadays, white male cis composers are just not my thing. Lydia makes perhaps her most noteworthy claim. Don't be so eager to be offended. The narcissism of small differences leads to the most boring conformity. And this is where I think these two clips differ. Constantine's speech was very interesting in that it was very much a willingness to speak to the other side. He wasn't trying to brag in as much as trying to meet the other individuals, his opponents, the woke individuals and students that he was debating on their terms, on their territory.
Now, I want to talk to those of you who are woke and who are open to rational argument. A small minority, I accept. Because one of the tenets of wokeness is, of course, that your feelings matter more than the truth. But I believe in you. I believe there are those of you here who are woke, who are open to rational argument, so let me make one.
Lydia was purely there to inflate her ego and has a lot in common with, I would say, the reactionaries that we see online who are anti-woke. You're an effing bitch. And you, Max, are a robot. I mean, unfortunately, the architect of your soul appears to be social media. You want to dance the mask, you must service the composer. You've got to sublimate yourself, your ego, and yes, your identity. You must, in fact, stand in front of the public and God and obliterate yourself. But at the same time, we can appreciate the genius of what Lydia is saying. We can appreciate how intelligently she was written. But I digress. I think we can also see the rise of anti-woke sentiment in the pejorative connotations that are increasingly being attached to the idea of woke. Libs of TikTok has nearly 2 million followers on Twitter, and I would say that the ideas of woke being used on this account and others like it is very negative, very pejorative, not at all associated with something that is deemed good or in any way right. To be woke is to be a spectacle, to be mentally deranged, to be an example of everything wrong with our culture and the degeneration of our culture and world. It is to have your hair dyed one of the primary colors, to be associated with the most recognizable memes that we see constantly online today. And so for me, this begs the question, why is the mainstream beginning to resist woke? So I've been thinking about this more and more so since my, I guess, controversy or I don't know if I've been cancelled exactly, but I guess my semi-cancellation since my video asking the left to do better. I was bombarded with comments, with emails, with responses of people telling me that I needed to grow, to educate myself, to really become self-aware. Things very much associated with at least the etymological roots of wokeness. And so in response to that, I went out and I did try to educate myself. I did my research. I found the facts. I found the science. I then tried to make diagrams and tried to make slides. But it didn't make a difference at all, especially not to the people who were telling me that I needed to educate myself, to better myself. And on reflection, I think that this was mainly due to my own response. My response was very much that of trying to present facts, trying to present evidence from sources which I thought and which, well, are in fact very pro the progressive agenda, very pro leftist politics. And I think I realized two things from this experience. Firstly, on the one hand, woke doesn't provide satisfactory answers to our society's bias towards science, reason, and facts. But on the other hand, beliefs, faith, and hope are what drive people, not facts. faith, not science, especially in politics. We found ourselves in a bit of a contradictory situation in our modern, technologically advanced economies, because we glorify science when it comes to everything in our lives, seemingly. But on the other hand, our politics is completely antithetical to that. When it comes to matters of politics and socio-political issues, confirmation bias trumps reason. And I think this is because reason is very unsatisfactory. Reason doesn't give us purpose. It doesn't give us meaning. It doesn't give us hope in the future. Reason, logic, and science tell us that we are going to die and be nothing. They tell us that we are pretty insignificant, that we are pretty insubstantial. Firstly, they pretty much tell us that we are nothing, that we are not special nor important. And secondly, they disprove all our moral convictions, especially ones that are very much entrenched in our cultural outlook. The idea that good things happen to good people and bad things happen to bad people. Reason is about generating sound judgments. It's about taking the more, I would say, centrist approach, this idea of hearing out both sides. And it's interesting that I've been accused of this, because this, at least to me, seems like a perfectly reasonable, rational, and logical, sound thing to do. It's based on sound judgment. One is innocent until proven guilty, etc. That sort of thing. But increasingly online, this is seen as a very negative thing by both the extreme left and the extreme right. And I think this is where confirmation bias really takes over. Confirmation bias is about belief over that of reason. It is about faith, and in this way, it is actually very religious. We may be living in the so-called atheistic age, at least insofar as science is concerned. But when it comes to our culture, our society, our politics, it is very steeped in religiosity. And when it comes to the internet, I would say that confirmation bias is in a bit of a frenzy. And this is because of the hyper-sociability and the hyper-social nature of the internet. We are in social connections, but far greater and far more concentrated ones. And this is ultimately what confirmation bias depends on in order to be reinforced, in order to be believed wholeheartedly. And it's difficult for me to admit this and to acknowledge this and to accept that individuals who approach me all the time with their confirmation bias are doing what is a very human and normal thing. And I have to accept that. And I think for me, it's involved just putting out this question to myself without there necessarily being an answer to it. Why reason and gain nothing but an appreciation of how stupid and ill-informed we actually all are, when we can instead gain sanctimony, followers, cultural capital, and power from winning arguments? This refers to an idea put forward by cognitive behavioral scientists Sloman and Fernbach as the illusion of explanatory depth. People believe they know way more than they actually do. What allows us to persist in this belief is other people. That is sociability, our social ties, our communities, and in the age of the internet and social media, hyper-sociability. And I think this is very, very interesting. And for me, this was a bit of a aha moment that I think I really needed in order to try to understand and grapple with my sort of cancellation, I suppose. Because what really fascinated me, just going back to this sort of contradiction we find ourselves in being in an age that really promotes and glorifies science, but at the same time is subsumed in a politics that is very irrational, very much based on belief, faith, confirmation bias, etc., is that in science, incomplete knowledge is vital to progress. Solving one puzzle merely creates a myriad of other puzzles that now need to be contended with. Yet in politics, this isn't the case. You know, when I say that I'm apolitical, I get a lot of heat. I get a backlash from it. And I am going to have to continue saying this just so that we get the message across. I think in very simple terms, when I say that I'm apolitical, I'm really trying to say that I know nothing. I have ideas, about justice, about what justice is, about how it should look. I have ideas about policy, about the world in which we live. I engage in politics insofar as reading about it, and I have ideas, opinions, and thoughts and beliefs on that. But in all actuality, I know literally nothing about any of these things. When I was at university, I found that the more I read of my favorite thinkers, for instance, the more I read of Thomas Hobbes, of Hannah Arendt, of Dostoevsky, the more I realized I know absolutely nothing about what they are saying. Whenever I got clarity or clarification on something said, that would just open up an entirely new world of other questions, of other unexplored avenues. And that is a very petrifying state to be in, but it is also reality. I'm quite figuratively speaking blind. And it's when we appreciate how clueless we are that we then moderate our views, hence moderates, hence centrists, hence the apolitical among us. As Sloman and Fernbach say, as a rule, strong feelings about issues do not emerge from deep understanding. This, that is, when we appreciate how clueless we actually are and then moderate our views, may be the only form of thinking that will shatter the illusion of explanatory bias and change people's attitudes. Now, I'm not very good at this, but I think Konstantin Kisin actually may be. Because in his speech during the debate on whether woke culture had gone too far, he actually employed a very different strategy. Rather than resorting to facts and reason, he employed the tactic of appealing to the emotions of his audience. He was very good at humanizing himself, talking about his son, his wife, making jokes, talking about woke individuals as if they were individuals that he could actually speak to. He wasn't laughing at them or lauding them. He wasn't trying to embarrass them. However, there is something a little contradictory as to what Kisin is advising in his speech, namely that we need to employ reason, science, the Enlightenment tradition in order to overcome and, in his words, defeat wokeness. He offers solution to our modern problems, such as climate change, that are heavily aligned to science. However, in the world of modern politics, the falsifications and the perpetual state of being wrong that is endemic to scientific progress is just not appealing to any politics. Science, like globalism or arguably globalization, doesn't give people the meaning in their lives, the meaning to continue day to day, which politics, as we see it today, gives people. It doesn't give us anything to believe in. And I think that's why when I say that I'm apolitical, it frightens people, or people just want to completely outright just resist whatever I'm saying. I think at the end, we just end up once again with confirmation bias, with people being grouped into their hypersocial communities, reinforcing their belief systems and their arguments, validating themselves and their belief systems. Because I think sometimes being anti-woke is just the flip side of the same coin. Writer Afua Hirsch made a very interesting point about this. This brings me to the final, sweetest irony of the anti-woke. Perhaps their greatest grievance of all is the alleged weaponization of identity. The idea that the woke, which tends to include brown and LGBT people among many others, have the audacity to express and be proud of their identities, rather than keep quiet, the better to fit in with conservative norms. In reality, the only thing that unites the woke is an intellectual curiosity about identity and how complex, how nuanced, how rooted in desperate history it can be. The real groupthink, the genuinely cohesive crowd, it's increasingly clear, is that of the anti-woke, the most weaponized identity of all. And I think Dr. Todd Grande makes a very interesting point about this when he, a few days ago, analyzed Steven Crowder.
Why do people want their political beliefs to be reinforced all the time? Steven is not about teaching, he is about validation. Each political ideology claims that they are based on science, yet neither appreciates one important scientific concept. It's absolutely okay, and actually necessary, to believe certain things. A person cannot be up in the air forever. But in the world of science, when a person comes to believe something, they then work to disprove that belief. They are always willing to evaluate evidence that may be against their conclusions and willing to change their mind. Steven Crowder encourages people to dig in on one side. One can make a better argument that he should be encouraging people to use their ability to reason, to contemplate compromise, and to appreciate the perspectives of other people.
Stephen Crowder is perhaps a figurehead of everything anti-woke, and his response to woke culture and to our woke progressive age, as he would call it, is very contradictory and quite ironic in the way that Afua Hirsch said. On the one hand, woke is about getting to the root, the nuance and complexity of identities and of our socio-political world. And then on the other hand, anti-woke is about getting to the nuance, the complexity, the reality, the facts, the reason of everyday life. Both of them have points of value for me, most definitely. I agree with a lot of things that woke culture, I guess, just generically stands for. I also believe in a lot of things that anti-woke individuals say about the world, about facts, about reason, science, enlightenment, liberalism, what have you. But I think both sides, in sort of quite wholeheartedly being aligned to their tribe, being aligned to their beliefs, are really falling into this trap of confirmation bias, which is, however, a very human trap. I can't exactly blame anyone for it. I do think 2023 may, generically speaking, be the year of anti-woke. I don't think that anti-woke is exactly a collective movement. I don't think it's a group of people who are really going full blaze ahead. There is no initiative to consensually dismantle and eradicate woke from our world. It seems to be a myriad of people with opinions, ideas, and agendas. When I watched her, I was incredibly moved by Lydia's depiction of how she approached Beethoven as a lesbian woman. She said that at some point in her life, she had to face Beethoven. She had to come nose to nose with his magnitude and inevitability. And I do think that's what we all have to do. We have to talk to our enemies. We have to talk to those who do not believe or see the world in the same way that we do. We have to face them, and we have to look right at them and have them look right back at us and judge us and humanize us, hopefully. But ultimately, we have to be vulnerable, standing naked before them. Figuratively speaking, of course, although it would be quite fun if we actually did have to. Sure, I am a black bisexual woman. I have my own identity and my own identity politics. I'm a minority, a marginalized individual, etc., whatever. But for me, I find that incredibly boring and very insignificant. That doesn't really feature terribly insofar as who I am or what I am. I'm a very, very complex, very nuanced person. You can't get to know me by just looking at me, and you can't get to know me by just taking snippets from my YouTube videos in order to support your arguments and perception of who I am or who I ought to be. And I think, again, on this, Lydia, who is a fictional character, but is, as a character, a bloody horrible bitch. I think she said something very important and very interesting that I will hold with me for, I would say, the rest of my life. Don't be so eager to be offended. The narcissism of small differences leads to the most boring conformity. And for me, in very layman's terms, this very much reminded me of Garrick Ollivander describing Lord Voldemort to Harry Potter. Ollivander describes Lord Voldemort as great. Terrible, yes, but great. And when you think about that, you really can't deny that. He is a great wizard. He does terrible things with that greatness. And that greatness doesn't take away from the terrible, deplorable things that he does. It does, however, add to the complexity of Tom Riddle. It does, however, add to the fact that we really don't know Tom Riddle, that we really don't know Lord Voldemort. And I think most importantly, it shows that even Tom Riddle is not the embodiment of evil. There really are no evil people. There are just, in this world, people capable of doing evil things and capable of doing, hopefully, in the majority of cases, good things. I think irrespective of whether we are woke or anti-woke, we should try, implore ourselves daily, constantly, to not fall into the trap of doing what every history book does. Reduce individuals to their labels or to their singular attributes, to mostly their physical attributes, at least as we see today. I think we have to face the fact that we all really know nothing, that life is far more complex and far more difficult than we give it credit for. And I think this unwillingness to appreciate this fact, to face it honestly and vulnerably is what led to the rise of woke and what may lead to the downfall of woke and to the rise of anti-woke, as if little old me has any control over anything, but alas. But I'd be very, very interested to hear what you have to say and what you think about this. Is 2023 the year of anti-woke sentiment on the rise? Or are you, like me, just concerned with your glasses not falling down your nose? Thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll see all of you very soon in the next one.